Hello everyone, Richard Lewis here with another video, and what we're going to do today is actually focus on some Counter-Strike. I know a lot of you guys have been looking at videos in the channel and been like, well, you know, this isn't about Counter-Strike, this is about politics, this is about games, this is about whatever, this is about dildos. We're going to get back to the bread and butter because obviously there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Counter-Strike right now, and I've been busy with E-League, haven't had a lot of time to sit down and talk about it, but now got a few days where I'm able to do that. So let's kind of start, and let's first talk about one of the big stories, I think, actually, of this kind of off-season, this mini off-season we're having before the next major and before the E-League finals, and that is Karrigan joining FaZe. Now, FaZe, for me, have been one of the great disappointments in modern Counter-Strike, and there's many reasons for this. A lot of people will know, and certainly not a lot of people have forgotten that during my time on By the Numbers, which was the Alpha Draft show that I did with Thorin, Alpha Draft have subsequently announced that they're not having anything to do with esports anymore. Who saw that coming? So they've gone. So rest in peace, By the Numbers. It was a great show. But during that show, there was a moment where FaZe had a really good collusion of poker, and Virtus.pro were in some sort of terminal slump, and everyone was saying, well, they're going to have to bring in one of these second-string polls and hopefully train them up. And there was some internal issues that weren't getting ironed out with Virtus.pro. So me and Duncan made a little wager, and the wager was that over the course of this year, FaZe would be more successful in terms of placements than Virtus.pro. Now, that bet's a complete fucking bust. I've absolutely lost hands down. There's no way to spin it because Virtus.pro have won some incredible tournaments. They're now currently in contention as being the #1 team in the world, and FaZe are fucking nowhere in that discussion. So why make that bet, I guess, is a good place to start. Well, let's rewind and think about their semi-final appearance at Collusion of Poker. This was a team that was filled with incredible aimers, you know, very smart, intelligent players, and they were really dragging out results when they were under the cosh. They were somehow always able to get it to overtime. Phenomenal numbers of clutches. You know, think back to like Makalele in Romania, I think had the highest number of clutches. It was something ridiculous where he had like, you know, 12 clutches in one series. And, you know, they gave Envious a hell of a game. They could have realistically beat Envious. It was a very close match. And one of the great series, you know, from that time. So at that point, you think, well, they're definitely going to progress because this is a team that's effectively been thrown together. And let's think about the origins of FaZe for just a moment as well. When FaZe said they were coming in, which was something that excited me because I like big gaming organizations to come in and pick up esports teams and expand and move into other games. One of the reasons why I was a great supporter of Envious coming in was that reason. It's great for esports, right? So when FaZe said they were going to pick up a team, I was very excited, and they paid top dollar for it. There's this Daily Dot report from Josh Raven, back when Josh Raven used to do reporting. You know, well, and I had a little hand in it as well. I did a report when I was over at Breitbart, which is referenced in this. You can see $700,000 was the payment to get this team from G2 Esports. So FaZe was serious, and they obviously saw the same level of potential that I did. I had conversations with the management at the time, and they were as convinced as I was, saying that, you know, maybe with one roster change, this can be one of the best teams in the world. That's what we believe. That's why we're investing in it. And maybe I got caught up in it. I don't know, but it seemed to make sense. All of these players have just incredible talent, all the talent that they needed to succeed. But they started making these tweaks, these alterations, and they got themselves into this cycle of not really looking. You know, they would identify a problem, and then they would change a player thinking it would solve the problem without even looking ahead to what problems might come in as a result of those changes. And I got to say, you know, I looked at it recently, when Kiyashima joined FaZe, and I looked at that lineup that they had at that moment in time, where Fox was still on the roster and Kiyashima's alongside there, and you've got AZ Rain and Jakeem. Well, this is a terrible team. This is not. There's clear issues there. Now, I was never sold on Fox, but the one thing I always gave him credit for, when maybe other people didn't, was when Fox was in this team, when he realized he was never going to be the AWP star of this team. It was never going to work. He was never going to be able to deliver the big numbers like he used to in 1.6. He stopped. He reinvented himself. He became a support player, and everybody was on board with that, and everybody was publicly saying good things about him. We all remember the famous Glock dropping quote. And obviously you had to have Makalele be the AWPer in this team. Now, when Makalele goes, Fox gets put back on AWPing duty. This is bad. This is a step backwards for the team. And it really showed in their results. It really showed in their firepower. And they were adrift for a long, long time. And people like myself, the pundits, we were trying to theorize, what did FaZe need? What were they actually missing? Because, sure, they brought AZ in, you've got Jacob, you've got Rain, so you think it can't be firepower, but they do need a top-tier AWPer, or do they? It was, do they need a recognized in-game leader? Well, they've got a coach. We were really trying to theorize what you could do to make this the balanced team that it kind of felt it was going to be when they first picked it up. All the tinkering that they made to this lineup actually made it worse. And I don't think anybody can doubt that now. It's reflected in the results. Now, when Kiyashima joined, which was, hang on, I've got the date in front of me here. This is back in April, I think. When Kiyashima joined, I was like, this is going to be, this is a step in the right direction. Because the one thing they don't have is somebody who's willing to just have no ego about how they play. Now, I've had conversations with Kiyashima. Kiyashima describes his strength as being one of those players who will do whatever it takes for the team to succeed. He is the guy who will literally just, look, what position's left, I'll do it, I'll fill it. And we had a discussion in the past where he said that's actually worth its weight in gold, that is better. He believes that's better than a star player. Now, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, but that's his thought process. And Kiyashima's been somebody who has shown he's capable of fragging, but as he's evolved as a player, he now wants to be that kind of like, I'll just fill the gaps. And that's fine. So the theory that me and Thorin had, again, going back to buy the numbers, and we were talking about this move at the time, was, well, now they've got a soldier. Now they've got somebody, no ego about what he does, happy to fit in these gaps, happy to sit around and just do whatever the team needs, happy to act as a support player if it's required. Fox was going to move to that aggressive AWPing, and Keo was basically going to be the guy that was going to be the glue that held this together. And they looked, slightly better to begin with. They had that initial honeymoon period, and then it just went back to this very expensive brand of mediocrity, which is pretty much what FaZe are famous for at this stage. So when rumors started circulating that Kiyashima was going to be out, it was going to be the dead man's shoes. Of course, by this point, they've already replaced Fox. Now, let's just do a little addendum, a little addition to this video. Obviously, I never talked about Fox and Arlo in a video all in of itself. I think Thorin did. But let's just quickly give some thoughts about that. There was no way they could have got a downgrade from Fox. End of discussion. Fox simply, his best AWPing days are behind him. I'm not saying this guy couldn't fit into a decent team. Maybe there's a job he could do in one of the Brazilian lineups that are out there, add a bit of experience, a bit of veteran smarts to a lineup. You look at the Team Luminosity have, maybe that's something he could do. But there's absolutely no way he is a top-tier elite-level AWPer and never will be again in CSGO. Never. Now, Arlo, obviously, he's got that Scandinavian language issue. I mean, he's Finnish, of course. But he can muddle through the whole Nordic Scandinavian thing. I mean, at least that's what they say. At least that's what they think. And that's fine. And let's be honest, when on a good day, Arlo is a decent player. He's never really worked for me when I think of top 5 AWPers. purely in St. Lucas, I don't think he's consistent enough. But I mean, he's still very good. He's an upgrade from Fox. So when you hear the rumors about Kiyashima getting the old dead man shoes, you know, you were the last guy in, out you go. Who are they going to bring in? And then when the whole Karrigan thing started getting talked about, I mean, all of us, all of the colleagues, all of the pundits and analysts and casters, we were all talking about it, saying this is a pretty fucking crazy story. Because from the get-go, the whole way that Astralis was modeled was pretty much Karrigan's, Karrigan and Freddie Biscoff, their manager's brainchild. He was the guy that really came up with the idea of getting investors in and having their own brand. You know, he was, well, heavily involved with it, I should say. It's not entirely his. Freddie takes a lot of that credit as well. You know, he's led the players from the front. And yes, they've had choking problems. Yes, they've had issues when it comes to winning and closing out tournaments. I would say in their heyday, you know, they're the best team to have not won a major, ultimately. There were certainly times when they should have been in real contention to have won one. But anyway, so, you know, the idea of him leaving all of that behind, his brainchild behind, and the players being okay with this, these young players that have been developed by Karrigan, that have dealt with his leadership style, seems quite incredible. And clearly as well, the person that they have lined up as a replacement, which was Glaive, I guess that's a subject for a separate video. You know, I like Lucas, but certainly there's question marks about his temperament and his ability as an in-game leader. He's nowhere as effective as Karrigan for me. I've watched Karrigan develop as an in-game leader. He learned how to be an in-game leader from watching God B. Back when they played mouse sports together, and it was something that he, as he got older, he brought into his game. Yeah, he doesn't get a lot of credit for it, and he's very good with a playbook. I think he's good at reading the game. I think he's good at galvanizing a team. But for whatever reason, Astralis just couldn't get over the hump, just couldn't get there and be a trophy-winning team. Now, he joins FaZe, and you're like, well, this is an interesting move. Does this actually improve FaZe? And we've had 1 week of seeing them at E-League, what they did after 2 days, which I'll talk about in a second. But let's just talk about initial reactions. There was some disagreement about whether or not it would fix FaZe. I was kind of more in the camp that actually, at this juncture, I think what they need is an in-game leader and just a strong leadership personality around the camp. I'll draw you to a report that happened. This was, again, also a while back. This was in March. So before even they started tinkering with the lineup again with Kiyashima. And this is an interview with AZ. It's over on that horrible esports rag Aftonbladet. Good news is, of course, they did get rid of that deranged journalist that they had over there who was a very, very strange guy and actually covered up a lot of stories in the scene. Quality journalist. But anyway, that's something for another time. We won't get the digs in. But in this interview with AZ, if I draw your attention down to it, he actually says something, and this is a quote that's always stayed with me, is that the team basically would have fallen apart if it wasn't for the coach, which is Robban, obviously a legendary 1.6er. And the quote is this: without him, everything would probably fall apart. It's a pleasure to work with Robban. He's incredibly good at what he does. He really wants to make us the best. So there was always this idea that they were having this internal friction, that there was two camps, you know, and they were divided in the team. And that it was Robban was the go-between. Robban was the person that was like keeping everyone's morale up. So straight away, I always thought, well, you can only do so much as a coach. Now, obviously, he's there behind him back before we brought this coaching rule in. But now more than ever, they need a galvanizing force on the server. So that was one of my rationales. The other thing was, now I looked at the numbers, and this is a terrible mathematical test. But, you know, hopefully you can see where I'm getting at with this. Now, we all know fragging numbers doesn't tell the full story. I try not to place too much stock in the scoreboard, you know. I try not to place too much stock in ADR. I think there's lots of other factors going when you look at statistics. But obviously, for the purposes of a broadcast, I don't think we have very good statistics in CSGO. I think the stats we've got, you know, we still use ridiculous things like headshot percentage. It means fuck all, really, in the grand scheme of things. You know, but what I like to look at is kind of numbers over time, try and spot trends, try and spot form. So I just looked at the last few games that these guys had played, Karrigan and Kiyashima. And what I did was I took the last 10 games they played for their respective teams before the move. And I chose only in regulation games, so no overtimes, because that can skew the numbers. And I just looked at the fragging, just over 10. It's not a big sample size, but I think 10's enough to kind of get a rough idea. And I added up all of the kills. And Kiyashima had 182 kills over that time period using that criteria, and Karrigan had 183. So in terms of firepower, I don't even think you're necessarily losing anything. Like, Kiyashima was not really brought in to be firepower. That wasn't the purpose of his acquisition. Now, Karrigan, I've always said one of the good things about him is he might not be a big fragging in-game leader, and he's had some terrible games. Like, you know, he's had some matches where when it's been bad, it's been fucking horrid. You know, it's been really painful to watch. Like, he can't get in, but there's actually a lot of strings to his bow. You know, he's a secondary AWPer, which is increasingly becoming useful in the meta. You know, having that ability on certain maps, Karrigan can do that. He's solid numbers, not great, but solid numbers when it comes to fragging. In this team, he doesn't need to have much more than that. And, of course, he's an in-game leader to boot, which Kiyashima wasn't. So immediately when you start putting the whole package together, you can see this clear upgrade. Now, we watched them in E-League, and this was with 2 days of being together and 2 days of practice, 2 days of ideas being circulated. And I was a little bit, I didn't put much stock in them. I thought they were, but we kind of got the predictions arse over tit, really, because we all thought the Mortals were going to win the group if people go back to our preview show, and that didn't fucking happen. And it seems there's something in the water in Brazil right now, because both of these teams, SK Gaming and Immortals, are having real problems after being pretty solid and reliable tournament winners for a while. It just hasn't really happened for them. They're in a bad spot. So when they played Cloud9 on Train, I was like, well, Cloud9 are good on Train, but this is a speciality map for FaZe. Rain's been going off, dropping unbelievable numbers. So obviously they'll beat Cloud9. It'll be close, but it'll be a win for FaZe. So they lost, obviously, 16-7. We got the predictions wrong. Moses was laughing in our face, as Moses does, like, hey, like he does. Like that little thing that sits on the end of Jabba's fucking bench, you know what I mean? And we were like, okay, fuck it. And then they play Immortals. Now, Immortals were fucking terrible at this E-League. There's no getting away from it. I don't know what the issues are with Immortals right now, but they started off that tie with a 16-2, and FaZe are looking very, very good on Mirage, incidentally, as things stand at the moment. Had some, in the Karrigan era, I should say. 16-2, and they managed to win. You know, they lost one map on overtime, again on Train. They seem to be regressing on Train, which was a FaZe speciality, and Karrigan acknowledged that in the post-match interview. And then they have a 16-13 on Overpass, which has been, a Brazilian staple, a go-to for Immortals. And while Karrigan's always had a kind of understanding of that map and had done great things with Strauss. Again, we had to say, well, it's Overpass, so Immortals are going to take it, but FaZe did it. FaZe closed it out. Then they get the rematch against Cloud9. Cloud9 obviously only had to win the series against FaZe, a team they'd already beaten. Now, what's interesting is this time FaZe there was 2 overtime games, and FaZe, again, won on overtime on Mirage, lost on overtime on Train, and then fairly comfortable win on Overpass again. So we are starting to see this evolution of FaZe. And I got to say, these are 2 series wins that I wouldn't have predicted ordinarily. A best of 1 on Train, that's one thing. Maybe you think, okay, the form of the players is going to carry it through. But best of 3s are a whole different beast. And certainly, if we were looking at a top 10, you got Cloud9 above FaZe, obviously. You got Immortals above FaZe, obviously. So these should have both been unbelievable games. And as Duncan rightly pointed out on the broadcast, and it's worth repeating, for anybody who's like, these are just 2 best of 3s, it doesn't mean a great deal. FaZe had never beaten a top 10 team in a best of 3. They'd never been able to do it over like the last, with that lineup that they had. So, you're talking 4 months. And this is why Duncan never backed them. And they were like, he'd even written an article FaZe couldn't buy success, saying that for all the money they spent, they've been absolute flops. Now, on this evidence, and it's an incredibly small sample size, and it's definitely too early to make bold predictions, but this could actually be it. This could actually be FaZe's time. And, if you look at what Karrigan did with Astralis and how close he got them to potentially winning trophies, sure, he might have had better talent there, but I think Karrigan's strengths as an in-game leader, they're not just about the playbook. They're not just about the tactics. They're not just about understanding the mechanics of a map, all of that stuff that you usually associate with an in-game leader. I will say this, and I know it firsthand from watching Karrigan work, he knows how to get the most out of players. And by that, I mean, he knows if a player can't play a position. He knows if a player has to go somewhere to be better at it. Think about when Kierby come in to Astralis. What was the first thing he said? He's like, I'm going to sacrifice my positions so we can give Kierby that one-for-one, swap. And we're going to put Kierby where he feels comfortable because we feel that's something that he needs. And certainly one of the criticisms in Kierby was nerves seemed to get to him in big matches and he'd go missing. Now, Karrigan has always, it was under his stewardship that Dupree became such a good entry fragger, It was, I think he definitely helped Device all round with his game, and the one thing that FaZe really needed was somebody to kind of be like, this has got to change. You can't just be running around. Rain has one good game, but everyone else underperforms. AZ has a good game, everyone else underperforms. Jacob has a good game. That happens less and less, although he did all right in E-League. He was more like his old self, considering he was considered to be one of the big stars coming out of Collusion of Poker, one of the breakout stories. So I think Karrigan's going to be able to sit down with this team now. He's going to get a bit of time, a bit of breathing room, and he's going to be able to basically sit down and be like, this is where the pieces all need to fit. So is it going to turn FaZe into a championship winning team? No. But here's the thing. I think FaZe would certainly take, with all of their popularity, all of their fan base, the #1 selling sticker from the last major, I think they would take the deep runs. I think they would take another semi-final. I think they would take being in contention, having close series with truly great teams. And it's going to be tough for them. I can't see them getting close to a Na'Vi. I can't see them getting close to Virtus Pro as things stand, despite an interesting history between the two teams, which probably deserves its own analysis. But ultimately, this is the first time when they've made a move where I've thought, right, then now this is a clear and inarguable improvement. And because it's the in-game leader, and actually having a recognized in-game leader in the team, this is something that I think moving forward, we're going to see FaZe's trajectory slowly start to head upwards. Where it ends, I don't know, but certainly I think we can all agree that even just on the evidence as it's laid out, this is going to be a better period for FaZe coming at the end of 2016 than it has been for a long, long time. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Thanks a lot for watching the video. See you next time.